Hey folks, John here from A is for Alcoholics again. Today's conversation is with Kim Hill. She is a sober runner. Two of my favorite things and two of my often most frustrating loves. So it was great to talk to her to get her perspective on both of these things, as they are both vastly different from mine and extremely similar. It's the paradox and the dichotomy of both of these things, such as life. But it was great to hear her program, her approach, and her way of getting through sobriety, getting through recovery, getting through a run, and more importantly, getting through the injury and the suffering and the pain that comes when we don't process what we are going through and finding a way to do just that. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Kim Hill. Well, good morning, Kim, or good afternoon, wherever you might be. Thank you so much.
Afternoon.
Yes. I appreciate you doing this. I know it's a chunk of time out of your day, and it's not always the easiest thing for people to talk about. Sometimes more than others, but I think it's important. I hope that it's helpful. It's certainly helpful to me, and it's certainly important to me to hear what you have to say today. And in the most self-serving way, that's kind of part of why I really enjoy doing this with people, is for my own sanity. And so I assume that perhaps somebody else will feel a little less crazy by listening to this. So I found you on Instagram through running page, because I have multiple Instagram accounts, as people do, not for necessarily any sort of shady reason. Like I'm not, but I also felt like I didn't need to lump it all in one. And I felt like diversifying it made sense to me. But we both run, or I haven't in a little while here, but we're also both sober. And so I'm always very excited to hear from somebody who's also a runner and who is sober. So I'm wondering how that came about with you. And I always like to hear people's earliest memories of alcohol and alcoholism, theirs or whomever's.
So thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, by the way. So thanks for this opportunity for me sharing my story. I think for me, I'll start with my earliest interaction with alcohol. I was 2 years old, and my grandma was born and raised from in Ireland, and came over to, like, my family came over to America from that side of the family, and the tradition was to rub whiskey on babies' gums as they are teething. So she poured a little cap, or poured some whiskey into a little cap, and I grabbed the cap and I took a shot of whiskey at 2 years old. I didn't know, right, way back then about it. So that was probably my very first interaction and I don't remember this.
Right.
Like, this is what my family tells me, because I was 2 years old. So that is my very first interaction with alcohol. Was that early?
Yeah, that's crazy to me. And I mean, I guess it's to each his own, right? And I've had women come up to me, and I worked in a hotel bar for a while, and they were giving their children sips of wine, and maybe that's a better way to go. I was a little shocked at first, because I'm working in a bar, and as a professional setting, like, I can't have minors drinking, but also it's your child, so maybe it's okay. I don't know, but it seems a little much.
Yeah, I would say these days probably extreme, right? I guess back in the old days, right? Like, that was common to use whiskey or rum or whatever to numb a teething child's gums.
Yeah. So when did you find it to be something that you indulged in?
I was probably, I think I was 16 when I started to really, socially drink.
Mm-hmm.
Going to underage parties and really enjoying those Bartles and James berry wine coolers.
I remember those.
Where back in the day. So I would say it started then, and it was underage parties, and I drank socially, probably out, without ever thinking I had a problem, right? Probably until I moved to Wisconsin in 2007. And the state of Wisconsin, drinking is a religion here. It is embedded in every cultural activity you can think of. Alcohol is here and available 24/7. And
Wow.
I moved here in 2007 after going through a divorce. And I kind of just dove right in head first into the culture. I probably would say I didn't really start having issues or recognizing that I had a problem until 2019. I had major knee surgery in January of 2019. I actually had a cartilage transplant of my kneecap, and it shut me down from being active for 10 months. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I, had been struggling with depression on and off for quite some time, and anxiety, and going through a lot personally. Like, my father had died 10 years ago, and like just the ins and outs of just always not processing my emotions. And being shut down from running, which has been always a significant part of my life, or just being active in general, I started self-medicating with alcohol and with food, like blackout weekend activities. I never drank on the weekdays because that was work, right? Those were work days. So I was like, I don't have a problem because I only drink on the weekends, right? And that drinking was blackout drunk every weekend.
So you made an interesting point. There's you said I didn't start having consequences, or I didn't start recognizing that I was having consequences. And I think that is such a crucial thing as far as the blind spot, the huge epic blind spot that we live with for years, if not decades.
Oh yeah.
As alcoholics. The little moments that I have, the memories I have, and I go, my God, that should have been a red flag. That wasn't, but that was just
right.
another Tuesday morning.
Right.
And it's just crazy. So 16 Bartles and James, and you're going on, and you said you moved to Wisconsin in 2007.
Yep.
Okay. So you've been there for a little while. When
Yep.
did consequences begin to take over the fun of drinking?
It was 2019 as well.
Okay.
Again, so January was my surgery. Fast
Right.
forward to September of 2019, I went in for my annual physical, and my doctor was reviewing all my blood work, and she basically told me I was writing myself an early death certificate if I didn't, and I needed to get my shit together. My blood work was my liver count level, every level under the sun was atrocious. And what was more concerning is my glucose and my sugar. She diagnosed me as being pre-diabetic. And she's like, do you have a problem? And I broke down in her office and I said, I need some help.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point. That was the turning point for me all along, like you said, these red flags, they were in your peripheral, but they never were, because I didn't have a DUI, right? I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
fired from a job. I was never arrested. Like all these things that I think, as I like to refer to, Hollywood glamorizes with being an alcoholic, never happened to me, right? So I was like,
Right.
I did not fit society's definition, so I was fine.
Right. And I assume being immobilized with something like a knee surgery has got to be huge. And I have been dealing with some, in comparison, extraordinarily minor injuries that have still kind of like, I'm like, I can't keep forcing myself to go run too soon and then hurt myself again and again and again, and one of the things that the realization I came to is I just need to knock it off and let these things heal. But I'm trying to imagine 10 months of absolute immobility. And like, can you talk a little bit about those feelings and drinking during
Yep.
that time?
Yeah, it was interesting, because I just kept thinking I'm never going to run again, right? Like I was in a lot of pain. The surgery is pretty intense. The recovery twice as intense, and my surgeon after the surgery, when he released me from the hospital, after 24 hours, he's like, now comes the hard part. And I had no idea what he was talking about, right? First of all, I was in a drugged up haze, because I was in so much pain, but I didn't realize he was talking about how hard recovery from my surgery was going to be. And it was horrible. Like I never thought I was going to run again. And because of that, I started to drink more and more because again, running was such a huge part of it is such a huge part of who I am. I mean, my name on Instagram, right? Like it's got running in it. So, it's something I've done my entire life. And it was just, I think, realizing that it might not be there anymore. I just started to sink and sink and sink. And again, it was never on the weekdays that I drank. But I would go out with friends on the weekend and it would just be like having the beers because I didn't know how to process what I was feeling.
Right. And just feeling stuck, and that
Yeah.
the idea of being in denial of the situation and feeling like you're going to have to grieve this thing that will never come back, the death of this thing that I imagine for you it's a mental thing as well, that the running kind of
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
relieves me
It is my
mentally.
Prozac.
Yes, yes.
Running is my Prozac, right? Like it is the days I don't run now, right? I walk. Like I'm always doing something to
Mm-hmm.
move my body. And I would say activity, like moving my body is my antidepressant
Yeah.
and my anxiety med.
So what did the doctor say that day in the office when you asked for help? What was the
She's
step?
she's like, well, she first thing she did was like, okay, we're gonna have to tackle this in a different way. But she's like, you have to stop drinking. She's like, are you ready to stop drinking? And I said yes. And that was like September 3rd, 12th. I think it was a Friday. Um, and then the 14th was the last day I had a beer. And then
Mm-hmm.
September 15th is, my soberversary, my birthday, whatever we want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the thing. She said, like, are you prepared? So she, and then she's like, do you want to find meetings? Like, how do you want to do this? And like, my uncle on my mom's side was an alcoholic and went through, went through the 12 step, and that was his big thing. And I felt at the time it wasn't for me, and it probably
Mm-hmm.
still isn't for me because I'm just a little different than that. So we made sure to get in touch with my insurance company, and then my EAP through my employer, which is an employee assistance program. At the time, my employer offered therapy, like free therapy. So we immediately we found a therapist who works, with alcoholics or substance abuse, and started down that path. So basically on September 15th, 2019, I quit alcohol. I quit sugar. I went low carb and low gluten.
To knock
all at once.
Okay. And how was that? I mean, having to take away all the crutches at once, what are you hanging on to? What are you standing up, on?
That my goal was that I had my eye on the prize was the beginning of November 2019 was my final appointment with my knee surgeon to release me to run. And my primary doctor said she was not going to write a letter, basically saying I'm cleared from her perspective to run until she saw some improvements, physically with me, because she was very concerned that I had gained so much weight so fast and that I was basically spiraling out of control.
Yeah. And so what happened on that day with the surgeon? What did the surgeon say in November?
I was released to run.
And what was the first run like, or when did the first run occur?
The first run, or it occurred the Saturday after my appointment. My appointment was on a Friday. That Saturday was, so that Friday after my appointment, I immediately went to the running store to get fitted for new shoes, because I wasn't gonna, I was so terrified to give myself any extra hope by doing all that prep work ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So I went to the running store, got fitted for new shoes, and that Saturday morning was my very first run in over 10, or actually over maybe a year.
Wow.
I think, or 11 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in those first, so you have a little more motivation, I think, in that there's also these health issues, when people hear pre-diabetes, and I have friends who have been through this, and they've had to basically just, hit the brakes and turn the car around entirely, and just to get this glucose level back down to a normal place. And from my understanding, it's surprising and scary how off the charts we can get it with the food that we eat and with the booze that we drink. And, you're like, oh, the number's supposed to be 7. And mine was at like, I don't know, I think it was like 200 or something, or maybe I'm over exaggerating, but I think that was something like that. And in those first days, weeks, how did you get through not having a drink? What tools did you have at that point? You were going to therapy.
So that's a great question. The first 3 weeks, right? Because that's when you're detoxing and your body I was detoxing everything at once, which was, I don't recommend to anyone to do what I did, but it was that dire of a situation from my doctor's perspective. Therapy, I started going back to the gym, and I got myself on the exercise bike, and I said, I actually scheduled in my appointment with the gym and it was hard. It was hard, right? And I, look at the pictures from back then, and I was like, I try not to scold myself, right, for letting myself get that bad. But therapy, and then my husband was a great supporter of that, and my closest friends who knew what I was going for would always check in, make sure I was okay, and make sure I didn't need anything. But I would say for me, it was therapy, because it was learning to process everything I hadn't processed in probably a good 15 years.
Yeah. Can I'm really curious about the word process. And
Hmm.
it's also a thing that I hear from people. They'll say, you got to do the work. And
Yep.
it's always this phrase and this wording that it seems very vague, and it also seems very daunting at the same time. And so I think a lot of people throw their hands up and go like, well, I'm just supposed to do the work. What is the work? What do you mean process what? My feelings of, I don't know. But how did you what was the process? Can you talk a little bit more specifically about that?
Sure. I think the end goal, right, was to learn to forgive myself, um, right, and give myself grace, which is, something I think anybody who struggles with addiction, right, has, and has come through the other side, is learning on a daily basis. And I think it was really accepting that I am not perfect and it's okay to not be perfect. Like I had this image of myself that I had to keep up, kind of keeping up with the Joneses. And my therapist at the time, we really worked on like understanding like why I felt that way and like why I felt like I needed to do all those things.
Hmm.
And it was really trying to like understand and work through my behavior on like why I did the things I did, um, and learning to just sit with my feelings too. Like it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be mad, it's okay to be, you know, happy, right? As long as we're not spiraling from it. At least for me,
Yeah.
everybody's different, but that was the big thing for me about processing it, was like learning how to handle and having like different ways to handle the stressors. Like
Yeah.
the first thing I would always do is go grab a beer, right? Like to handle the stressor, and can't do that anymore. It's not even that you can't do. I don't want to do it anymore, and I think that is the big takeaway, is that it's just I don't want it in my life anymore.
Yeah. And you don't have to have it. I
Right.
think too, we used to have it. It was a requirement, to the point where my entire day was based around how I was going to get it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so how was that first run? Was it difficult? Was it hard? Was it freeing? Was it
All of the above. I mean, it was everything. And right, like I cried at the end. My husband came with me, so like I cried. It was like 20 minutes long. It wasn't very long, and it was a run walk, right? But it was
Mhm.
just to be able to do what I am most passionate about, again. It was just, I was like, it's all worth it for me. It was everything. The I'll call my temper tantrums, my anger, the frustration. It was all worth it to get to that place on that day.
Yeah. Yeah. I ch- I have to stop myself, because sometimes people will ask me about it a little bit, they'll either at work or something, they'll ask me about running, and I have to not get as excited as I do to talk to certain people. And I'm like, are you sure
Hmm.
you want to hear this? Because I'll go on, and it's just it's got to be boring for you, or annoying, right? But there's this like that feeling of like, oh my God, I can do this. This is
Yeah.
what my body was built for, and this is where I feel free and feel the best. It is something that I don't think that I have ever felt in any other way from any other thing. And in 2020, I was in a therapy session. I was doing some online therapy, and the therapist said something to the effect of, John, do you have anything else that you use to cope? And I said, no. And she said, well, you should really, really try to find something else, because if you don't have that, then you're going to be in trouble. And I don't want you to be in trouble. Um, have you found other things other than running that help you?
I have. It's a lot of it is all fitness related.
Sure.
So yoga,
Mm-hmm.
weightlifting is something I really, at the start of the pandemic, right? My gym shut down. I couldn't go to my gym anymore. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I spent probably the first 6 months of the pandemic building up my home gym, right, with all the free weights. So and I joined an online system, Beachbody, if you're familiar with that.
Mm-mm.
And so I joined Beachbody, and then I, just started working out that way. And now I lift 4 days a week. I run 4 days a week. I do yoga 1 to 2 times a week. And the other one thing I found really, really incredibly helpful was walking. I think also at the start of the pandemic, with no races to focus on, I was a little, to what your therapist said, you're going to have to find something else or you might be in trouble. Like, I started to feel very overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't have something else to do. So walking became, the days I didn't run, walking became that thing. And it's not fast walking, it's not power walking, it's really going for a nice 4 to 5 mile stroll and just being outside. I listen to podcasts, so I started listening to your podcast. I listened to a couple other podcasts that I'm subscribed to, and that's my other, coping mechanism. Is just, doesn't matter how cold it gets here in Milwaukee. I go outside every day. I'm outside, and just having that connection to nature and that beauty, um, it's a game changer. At least for me, it was a
Yeah.
game changer.
Did you find in the beginning of the pandemic, or at any point during all of the more severe periods of it? I don't want to claim that we're out of it by any means,
I
but
know.
did you find it difficult to stay sober? Did you have moments where you wanted to drink or thought it might be okay?
Believe it or not, I didn't have those moments because I was a very social drinker. I didn't really drink at home. I was
Mm-hmm.
all about going out to the bars and, being that party girl. And, at the I don't have alcohol in my house, obviously. So it wasn't and I wasn't the one going to the grocery store at the time. My husband was shopping during the beginning of the pandemic. So I never saw, like, it was never in my mind, be like, oh, it would be really great if I never had the urge, right? Like, it kind of, I guess I get so focused on, like, I wanted to stay healthy, and I knew,
Yeah.
like, alcohol can suppress your immune system, and, like, the beginning of nobody knew what was happening, right? And it was
Right.
like you were absolutely terrified of whatever this thing was that was
Right.
literally shutting the world down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know it's been quite a thing for people. I mean, the addictions and the overdoses during the pandemic have just escalated to something, new heights that we haven't seen. And I'm just, the gratitude I have for myself to stay so grounded in my belief system and like what I need to do for myself is, I think, really helps keep me centered with it.
Okay. And then so speaking of belief systems and stuff like that, I'm also intrigued and interested when I hear from people who get sober, stay sober, and want to stay sober, who don't follow the same program that I do, because the program that
Mm-hmm.
I follow, the 12 steps that I follow, makes sense to me. And that's fine. Like, I'm all for any which way that you can do it and live a better life. I'm just always curious as to what does your program, what is it centered around, that the belief system, the program, what is it that sobriety, what in sobriety has replaced what drinking gave you?
That's a great question, because I know people are often, how did you do it? Like, why did you do it? Right? Did you follow its 12 steps? And the answer is I didn't. And I think for me, it's just being present in my life, being present in my job, like doing
Mm-hmm.
my job well, being present in my relationship with my husband. Um, all those things suffered when I was drinking, even though I didn't recognize, or again, another, you don't see those flags, right? Even though people
Yeah.
say things to you, you're like, oh, I'm fine, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I don't need to hear that. But I think for me, it's just always being present, and just the centering in on gratitude. Like every morning I wake up and I list the 5 things in a journal that I'm grateful for. And even before I go to bed, I write the 5 things that I was grateful for that occurred in the day. So I'm very centered in on gratitude and staying present in my life and those that are important in my life.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of writing, writing it down, writing in general. Excuse me, even if it's only that gratitude list, right? Even if that's the
Yep.
only thing that one writes. And I've had a couple of other people who've asked me for advice, and I've said, go get a journal. It doesn't have to be, excuse me, something fancy or leather bound. I know that a
Nope.
lot of people will, pardon me, a lot of people will want to get a big fancy notebook, and they'll want to get a pen, and then it'll be too fancy and too cool to use, and then it will sit there and it won't actually do what it's supposed to be doing. And so I always tell people, go to the dollar store, go to the drugstore, and get the cheapest, thinnest, whatever notebook, because this is not about something that you're going to even share with the world. You may not even go back and reread it. I haven't read most of mine, but
Right.
the daily practice of just writing things down has been super helpful to me. And I don't know, obviously you do it twice a day. So it makes a
Yeah,
huge difference of just
it
putting that
does.
on
Like,
paper.
again, those little things to focus
Hmm.
on are really what helps keep me moving forward. I think, at the start, when I was started with therapy, my therapist recommended there were put 5 things that you want to accomplish daily and hang it up on your bathroom mirror. And that's what I did. Like things like, I
Hmm.
mean, and it was like very task based, but very simple, like brushing your teeth twice a day, right? Showering, right? Like just the very eating what you're on your plan, right? That your dietitian has prescribed to you. Like it was very basic things, but it was like, you took a step back and you recognized, wow, that all this has not been part of my life for a very long time, right? Like those simple basic tasks, really, you're like, after a while, right, you develop the pattern, and like a healthy pattern, and it stays with you. And those little tips and tricks I learned in the beginning from the therapist I saw then, it was she was amazing, and
Yeah.
a huge part of why
Yeah.
I'm still sober today.
Yeah. And then once you can get yourself to brush your teeth twice a day, and then you can build on top of that and on top of that
Right.
and on top of that. And it sounds, it doesn't sound like much, but it's a big deal in those, especially in the early days of recovery, of sobriety, and trying to rebuild this life so that you don't want to or need to go drink, you know?
Right. It
Um,
was all very overwhelming in the beginning,
sure.
right? Like there's you didn't have your hiding. I didn't have my hiding mechanism anymore.
Yeah. And that's,
So
hiding is a good word, because what are we hiding and what are we hiding from? And it's
Yep.
usually, like you said, something we have not processed in our own life. Another thing you said, Milwaukee, and
Hmm.
I didn't know anything of, the only thing I knew about Milwaukee was Milwaukee's Best ice, because of the alcohol content, and I think perhaps Blue
Hmm.
Ribbon, right? And we always used to joke
Yep.
and say who was giving out the blue ribbons that day, because this is terrible, right? So living in a place where alcohol is the culture. I live in wine country. Some might say it's a little more elevated. It's just more expensive way of getting drunk. But but how do you cope? And now, like, say you go on a race and a run, and I'm sure there are runs where it's like a beer every mile, right? Things like that. They do those
Hmm.
kinds of things. Now that you are not drinking, you're not going out on the weekends, maybe your coworkers were they like, hey, and I know the pandemic has kind of changed and shifted, dynamics for sure. But hey, Kim, where are you? Or what do you mean you don't want to have a beer? Or you're not going to run this race with us? Or you're not going to stop and get a beer every mile? I mean, how have you coped with being so ensconced in a heavy drinking culture where you live?
It's another good question. And I think it's just, I surrounded myself with people that absolutely respect me and where I am in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I, I've actually found some runner friends who also don't drink at all. They're not, they don't have an addiction, but they've chosen not to just drink alcohol, which is, you know, rewind a few years and I would have looked at them sideways. So I think there was something wrong with them. And these days, I absolutely appreciate that because I don't feel like I'm the only one right out there
Yeah.
anymore. And I'm not a big people pleaser. I'm the furthest thing probably from a people pleaser, but knowing I'm not the only one who's not drinking, it kind of does take a little bit of the pressure off. And if somebody, nobody in the beginning, people, and I said, no, thank you, I don't drink. You heard the stereo, like women in general be like, oh, are you pregnant? Right? Like that is like when women say they don't drink, that is like the first thing that jumps to people's minds. And it's just, I would roll my eyes and say, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
choosing not to drink. Right. And if it's somebody that within my circle of trust, like I will share it out. But if it's people I will not waste my energy on and explaining why I don't drink, like I'm just like, whatever, right? Like,
Right.
so I think surrounding myself with people who don't drink or people who do drink but absolutely respect where I am in my journey has been the game changer too. Because I can go to a bar and have a club soda and
Mm-hmm.
be fine if I have those people around me. I don't know if I would feel comfortable going to a bar by myself. I've never tried it. I don't
Yeah.
want to try it, right? I don't need to try it. But if it so happens that I end up in a bar with, people that I trust and know where I am in my journey, I don't feel that pressure at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think finding people that will support your decision is crucial. I have a friend I see semi regularly, and he still drinks, but there's no pressure from him to drink. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
he would be probably horrified if he thought that his drinking was going to affect me or something like that, right? And he's invited me out, and I've been out at a bar with him before, and I have my club soda, but once I've had like maybe two, and I'm looking around and I'm like, my business is done here. I have no more, I'm not interested any
Yep.
further, right? Like I've it's been about 30 minutes and this is kind of boring. So I'm gonna
Yep.
go.
it
You guys have
it is.
fun. Mm.
Right. You're like, I'll catch you later.
Uh-huh. But it's just like I don't find it interesting anymore. And it used to be the
Oh,
most
yeah.
interesting thing in the world.
You're right. It's like what your life revolved around, right? It was
Yeah.
like the corner bar stool was yours and you sat there and like
Mm-hmm.
now I'm just like it was it was interesting. My husband and I went to a concert Saturday night. It was our first concert, you know, in the pandemic, endemic, whatever everybody's calling it. So and there were some very intoxicated people there. And it was just I was like fascinated because I was like, number one, I'm like, oh gosh, I used to look like that. And I was like, so I was a little bit horrified, but then I kind of felt sorry for them because I was like, are you even going to remember what you heard and experienced? And the answer is probably no, right? Because these people were falling down, like somebody toppled down the stairs. And, you know, it was probably the first concert. It was probably my second concert indoors sober. And I remember every single second of it, every song that was played, every movement, right? That the band did, the light show, everything about it. And I was like, it was just such a different experience. And
Who was it?
It was amazing.
Who did you go see?
It was The War on Drugs.
I only know that there's one song I know, and it sounds like a Bruce Springsteen song, and I can't remember the name of it. But
the new one I Don't Live Here Anymore.
Is it?
Probably they're newer.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like Springsteen. Yeah.
Okay. But so it was awesome. It was an awesome show.
Oh, it was amazing. It was, I had at one point I said to my husband, I was like, I have to go to the bathroom, but I am not leaving because I'm enjoying this experience so much. I was like, so I will wait until the show is over.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, you know, you can't really tell those people that are falling down drunk that like you're missing out on this other thing, because they would probably say the same thing about you. They're like, what do you mean you're missing out on it? And so I think the other thing is that people are just ready when they're ready, and you can't force them to be ready.
And that's I think the biggest lesson I've learned, right, was when everybody's like, well, how did you know it was your time? Like I say that to everybody. I was tired of my own shit, right? You get to the point where you're just tired of your own shit. And I was like, but everybody's got to get to that point. And I mean, I know people are like, well, rock bottom. And I'm like, that's not a phrase I like. I heard, I was listening to a different podcast and they talked about hitting the floor. And I thought that was an interesting concept too, because everybody has a different place where they feel like they get tired of their own shit. And then there's people who never get tired of their own shit. But when you're ready, it's to your point, you know when you're ready, and only you can make that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, I've talked about it before with people where, you know, there's the rock bottom, there's a mid bottom, there's all people who have a high bottom. Like you don't have to hit the floor. You don't have to lose everything. You don't have to lose anything,
right,
to make a decision to quit drinking. And you certainly don't have to join my cult. So, you know, it's like there's many different ways to do this. And so I don't think I would, if anybody's listening that thinks they have to hit rock bottom, I would say absolutely not. It is not a prerequisite for getting sober. And so let me ask you about running now in 2022. You just finished a race, right? You went to New Orleans, is that correct?
I did. I ran the rock and roll half marathon in New Orleans.
How was that?
Yep, 2 weeks. It was great. It was chilly for New Orleans, right? It was warm for me. I got to run in shorts and a tank top in February, so I think that's exciting. I mean, it was great. It was, again, New Orleans is another party city, but I just didn't put myself in a situation that I didn't want to be in, right? Yeah. So I didn't go to the French Quarter. I don't like the French Quarter anymore. It's not my scene at all. I'm like, you know, I'll be 49 next week, and I'm just like, oh man, like I am too old for this, like this nonsense, this staying up late nonsense. Yeah. even after the concert, I was exhausted. But on Sunday, I was like, oh. But it was like running is going so well. Knock on the wood. My knee is doing really phenomenal. My surgeon is over the moon every 6 months I go in for a checkup, and he is just over the moon with how far I've come. And he too is a big believer of that, me focusing in on quitting alcohol has really been a lifesaver for me, like emotionally and physically.
Yeah, I was in New Orleans in 2017 and walking through the French Quarter, and I was just like, I wasn't horrified because I had seen similar things before, but I was pretty disgusted. Um, this was the middle of the afternoon, and people are stumbling out of the bars, and they're stumbling into them. And there was like some really sad hot dog vendor next to a horse who was shitting in the middle of the street. And I was like, my God. And I was on my way. I went and found a meeting there, I ended up having a really awesome time at the meeting. But I was like, oh God, this is horrible. You would have to be drunk to be here. And no disrespect to New Orleans, because we got to be in a second line, and we had some awesome music on Frenchman Street, and we had an amazing time. But the 15 minutes that I walked through the French Quarter was not part of that.
Yeah, I don't recommend the French Quarter to anybody. I would say put your toe on Bourbon Street, to say you put your toe on Bourbon Street, but then go uptown, go to the Garden District, go to, there's so many other amazing places in New Orleans that you don't have to go, that do not, are not what the French Quarter is.
Okay. So I want to ask you some personal advice.
Sure.
And so this is strictly for me. So anyone who's listening, who you can fast forward through this, if you don't want to hear about my running nonsense, go ahead and do that now. But I really need your advice, because over the last year and a half, 2019 was the most amazing, epic year of my life in recent history. I lost 90 pounds. I started running. I ran my first half marathon in Joshua Tree. I thought that I was over the moon about it all. I had it all dialed in. And then March 2020 came. And then by May of 2020, I had been off the diet, other injuries and just aches and pains. My ankle started hurting. And, recently, the Morton's neuroma, there's a nerve in the bottom of my foot that is like, it's impossible to go for a run. Like, it's literally a sharp stabbing pain. I pulled a muscle in my back, swinging a kettlebell around, because I didn't know what I was doing. And then just recently, I was trying to do some sort of like one-footed knee squats, trying to strengthen something. And I pulled something else, and I'm like, damn it. Like, these things keep happening to me. I've since gained 25 pounds back, 30 pounds, which again is not huge. And I'm still walking, and I'm upright, and all of these things. But I was just like, you know what? I'm done beating myself up. And like, I keep going out there, and then I set myself back. And then I keep going out there too soon, and I set myself back. And I'm so frustrated. I just want to like wrap up all the running shoes and put them in the closet and forget all about it, because I'm just tired of, like, I feel as if, it's like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football. And I feel like I have a good day, and I get excited, and I go out there, and then something else absolutely ruins it. And I am trying very hard to find grace and forgiveness and get excited about being on the bicycle. And I'm finding it very difficult. But I'm also just like, I'm fucking done. Like, maybe I have made this identity as a runner. It was a foolish thing, to do it. And I just want to quit and be done, because obviously my body does not want me to run. At least that's how it feels. And it feels like a dirty, dirty trick that my mind is playing, or my body is playing on my mind. And I'm just like, this is all bullshit. And I'm tired, and I just want to scream and cry, and then be done with it and move on with my life and go eat a whole bag of cookies. And I should say, if I'm being honest, eat a whole another bag of cookies, because I've already done that recently. So how do I process this current feeling of anger and frustration and rage at myself? And I'm just, these are just mild injuries that I'm dealing with, right?
Yeah.
But that's how I'm
It's
feeling, if that makes sense.
an injury, regardless of how severe, if it stops you from doing something you enjoy, it's severe, right? Like
Yeah.
in the medical, like I look at it from a mental perspective, it's severe if it stops you. It's tough because I think you do, it sounds like you absolutely do need to give your body a break. And it's like maybe you were trying to do too much too, right? Like sometimes they say that too, that you start doing too much or too many different things causes injury too. But it's tough. Like that's hard. Like it's a hard question to answer because it's like, wow.
Well, I don't, and I'm not, there's absolutely no pressure.
Yeah.
You are not responsible for my.
Right. I mean, for me personally, like as much as, I've learned that there are days and weeks that you just, and even sometimes a month, you just have to take off from running. And I think the struggle then becomes is, what do you find in its place to help be that, that coping mechanism? Because I will say that one thing I have learned through recovery is a lot of us do run as part of our program, right? Or there's some sort of activity in our lives as part of the program. And I would be similar to you where I would struggle with the bike. I think it was I saw one of your posts about trying to like the bike or something. And I was just like, I feel you. I absolutely feel your pain because it is just not it's not the same thing.
It's just not the same thing. I mean, it's fine. I've had some lovely bike rides in the evening here in wine country and the vineyards and all that stuff, but like,
it's pretty, but it's just like, it's not the same. And if you're not a runner, people like have no idea what you're talking about, right? So, I will say, knock on wood, since all of this has happened, I haven't had my longest shutdown was 10 days. And it's because I get a knee injection every 6 months. It's not a steroid injection. It's actually hyaluronic acid into my knee joint to help, cushion it. And usually I have to take off 7 to 10 days, depending on how it feels. So that's been the longest time I've gone without running since, getting sober. But it's a hard question. I don't think anything can replace it.
I know. And I'm gonna do everything that I can. But it was definitely, and also you're probably right, because there was a period I was going out like every single day I would have to run. So it was like 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And even there were people who were regular runners who are like, that might be too much. And I'm like, no, it's fine. I mean, I'm sore, but it's like, did it really just catch up with me that quickly? And did it sort of, did it converge with my age? Does that really do I have to, like, is it really that bad that like, am I in my mid 40s? And so things just take longer and break easier? Fine. So I'm just like, grace, forgiveness, use all the tools of recovery and apply them here.
Yes. There are even, in my work life, right, my professional career, that my recovery tools come in handy.
Yeah.
Because there are moments, right? I can see it. I see it in running with an injury. And, and you've, like you said, you've had quite a few that they've happened right on top of each other. So that's not been really helpful for you either.
Yeah. I was given some reprieve for the half marathon in San Francisco. and I was able to do it, and it was an absolute
You
amazing
were.
day.
I was I was excited to see that you did finish it.
Yes, I finished, and it felt good, and it felt good afterwards. It's very rare that you get a 60-degree day with 0 clouds in San Francisco in February,
Yeah, it's true.
and like it couldn't have been better. You're running across, parallel to the Pacific Ocean and back, and like it was absolutely amazing. So I'm extremely grateful that my body allowed me to do that. And then, the day after, the next day, I tried to go out, and I was like, I couldn't get down the driveway. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, well, let's not abuse ourselves for the next 3 miles. Let's just turn around and take a break. Um, are there any things that you struggle with in sobriety now? I mean, are there any, or I should say, what are the challenges, or are there any struggles? Are there any challenges you find currently?
I am still, I guess, unpacking, if you will, some of the emotions and some of the things I went through, that I hid, like those feelings during, while I was like, I don't have a very good relationship with my family. So there was a lot of mental illness in my family. My sister was bipolar. She was also was diagnosed with lupus. She's no longer here with us, but a lot of the things that I experienced from my childhood, like that trauma, that
Mhm.
emotional trauma, that was, I always had swept it under the rug, I would say, has just started to kind of come to the surface. So, um, and I thought it was all water under the bridge, right? And I'm learning that it's not, and it's probably part of, and just one more thing I buried and, hid with drinking. So I think that's probably my biggest right now is
Yeah.
the PTSD in a way of, my therapist said it's PTSD of recognizing that, it's okay that I don't have that relationship with my family. Because if I hear one more time, oh, you should fix your relationship with your family, I'm like, just because you have a good relationship with your family doesn't mean I should too, right?
Mhm.
So it's a lot of right there. I think the struggle, emotion on the emotional side, is still a big thing for me. Like I can see why I drank,
Yeah.
to hide those feelings, because those feelings suck.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah.
I'm not,
Absolutely.
they suck.
100%. Yeah. Um, and then, what would you, somebody who maybe feels like they have a high bottom, mid bottom, somebody who's thinking about it, but is like, yeah, it's not really a problem, or, maybe struggling with a little bit, but they're like, I can handle this. What would you suggest to them? What would be some advice to somebody who might be thinking about taking a break or cutting it out?
I think there's a lot of information out there, available now versus like, probably when we were growing up. But I think,
Sure.
if you're a researcher, do your research. I mean, I don't, um, I always say this, like if you're employed and your employer offers an employee assistance program, there probably is some free counseling available to you.
Yeah.
Go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Um, you know, maybe it is a problem, maybe it isn't a problem, right? Like only, you can figure that out for yourself. But I will say the value of an employee assistance program, if it's available, has been, and then it's amazing. And then there's all this online, therapy that's out there now. And I think you have to be careful because there's probably some crazy out there as well. But again, I think do your research. I mean, there's a lot of good, um, sober Instagram accounts, right? I think the sober community on Instagram is pretty powerful. There's some really amazing people out there. I mean, like I stumbled upon you, and I think just by, looking at it and researching it and, reaching out is, it's okay to be like, I don't know if I have a problem, right? Because you don't know, right? Like society will tell you don't have a problem, but at the same time, they will tell you have a problem. So it's
I'm sure there was a Super Bowl ad or
tough.
two that says you don't have a problem and you should drink some more.
or 20 or
20.
30 for that matter.
So what's the next race? What's the next thing? What's the next, do you have one set up yet or no?
I do.
Okay.
I have a 10K this weekend.
Okay.
So I'm running a 10K. I do a winter run series. So I have that 10K for February this weekend. And then my next half marathon, because that's my big quest now, my big goal is to run a half marathon in every state and DC. So my next one is March 5th in the Woodlands, Texas, is my next half marathon.
Awesome.
So I get to check Texas off my list.
Awesome. That's exciting.
Yes, it is.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I will be working on the patience. I'm going to go for a bike ride after we're done here and continue to let everything just rest. But I will be looking forward to seeing you in Texas. And I'm always excited to see your posts and the photographs and the progress and all that stuff. So it's always fun to check you out there. Where can people find you on Instagram if they would like to?
Sure. It's at Running Kimmy. And it's Kimmey. There's an E in there because, it's running and then Kimmy.
Got it.
Kimmey.
Well, Kim, thank you so much. This was great. It was nice to meet you and talk with you.
It was awesome. This was great. Thanks so much for having me, Don.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com.
And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.